Okay, so before we finish the scenario, we have to look at situation one, which is here. And this is our local millage. All the taxing bodies, millage is 0.187. The only other number I had to come up with was what's called the common level ratio. Somehow you got to get from a fair market value down to an assessed value. How do you do that? Well, every county has a different number. That's given to us by the state Tax Equalization Board. So for Lackawanna County, the common level ratio is 4.72. The reciprocal of that, just 1 divided by that, 0.212, is the common level ratio factor. So you take the fair market value, multiply it by this number, and you get the assessed value, and that's what you tax people on. Okay, so we're still in Pennsylvania. Annual tax is based on assessed value, not fair market value. Well, the fair market value that we can tax in Pennsylvania is 50 million. Multiply it by the common level ratio factor. This is the assessed value, $10,600,000. What's the tax? The tax is that times 0.187. Add up Valley View, add up Jessup, add up the county. 0.187 is almost $2 million. That's their tax. Let's suppose that this fictitious power plant negotiated a $500,000 a year host agreement. Not taxes, host agreement. So add them up, it's like $2.5 million. So that's kind of like what you're getting. Now we're going to look at that same facility in, I think what Rick referred to as a pilot state. So let's look. All right, so now we're going to go to situation two, which is a pilot state where pilot programs are negotiated. And these are typically states that tax not just bricks and mortar, but also equipment and personal property. So everything in this $500 million facility would be subject to taxation. Okay, same plant, same fair market value. I don't know what other state we're in, so I use the same millage and I use the same common level ratio factor. Okay, so you have an assessed value of 500 million times 0.212. I'm sorry. You have a fair market value of 500 million times 0.212. Assessed value 106 million. Multiply that by your village, 19.8 million a year. Not too many developers are going to pay $19.8 million a year. Okay, so if you want them there, why would you ever want this facility? I don't know. Most people don't want it because it creates pollution. Some places want it because they get lower electric rates. Where you generate the electricity is normally going to be cheaper than where there's congestion, like New York City. So, and now you can draw companies that use a lot of electricity to your area because you sell electricity cheap. Whatever reason, doesn't matter. But if you want this facility there, and obviously some states do, the developer negotiates this 19.8 million down to 4 million in a pilot agreement. Perfect. Developer just saved $15.8 million a year. That's cool. And if he didn't negotiate that, he's probably moving to a different state. Anyway, this is the comparison. In Pennsylvania, 2.5 million is what the community gets, including the county and the school district. And the pilot state, it's 4 million. So you're comparing 4 million to 2.5 million. The difference is they're not paying $15,800,000 a year that anybody else would have to pay. It's sort of like if I had a house and I lived in a neighborhood and all the houses were $250,000 and I paid $4,000 in taxes. And somebody came in and built a $2.5 million mansion next door and paid $2,000 in taxes. I don't think we like that very much. The only reason we would support that is if we thought the $2.5 million mansion that comes into the community is going to raise all our prices. Anyway, what's going on? I get back to the the letter. Okay, so this is a quote from the letter, and this is something that we didn't agree with those guys on. Basically, they said that the facility in Jessup is at least 3 times larger than most comparable plants. Well, the plants we're talking about are in Pennsylvania, and that's not true. You just saw a bunch of them that were, you know, 70, 8, 900,000, 1,100 megawatts. 3 times bigger would mean that most of them are 500 or less. And there are a lot that are 500 or less. But anyway, there are many plants in Pennsylvania that are larger than 1/3 the size of the LEC facility. But more importantly was that the implication that there's big savings by putting 3 500 megawatt plants together. We disagree on that with the people at Fairshake because 90% of the plant is in the equipment. So if I have a 500 megawatt single shaft combustion turbine, steam turbine, I'm paying the same for that equipment, whether one's in Archibald, one's in Jessup, and one's in Troop, and if I put them all together. So, yeah, there's some savings in permitting, there's some savings in infrastructure costs, but in the grand scheme of the cost of a power plant, that isn't a big number.
What about saving the health of the people that live nearby?
I asked them where the $6 million breakdown came from on page 6, 7 of their letter. They said that came directly from their client, Citizens for a Healthy Jessup. Several points in their letter suggest a detailed evaluation of Invenergy's financial projections. I've been around this borough for 25 or 30 years. I don't ever remember asking anybody for their business plan or their pro forma for any of the projects that ever happened here in Jessup. I don't think
Dennis, it's illegal. You can't do it.
Right, okay, so it's illegal, but I never remember that ever happening. Okay, so, this is another one on page 7. They indicate that portion of the annual payment that they suggest in that $6 million would take care of the benefit they get from the KOZ that expires in 2023. Again, it's our understanding that you can't impose fees to make up for KOZ monies that they're saving in the first few years of this program here.
I think at that point, Dennis, that's when they thought that it was a pilot. They had mentioned, well, it's a pilot, it's payment in lieu of taxes.
Right, and it's not a pilot.
So they thought a pilot was legal?
Well, they thought that you could, yeah, well, I think, and believe me, these guys were great guys, they were very knowledgeable. I don't think they quite understood our situation. When they brought it up, there's a point in that letter where it talks about making up for the KOZ with a monetary stipend to the borough. And yeah, that's illegal. And I said, I don't think that's legal. And they said, well, that's a pilot. That's what a pilot is. I said, well, we're not in a pilot situation. We're in a host municipality agreement situation. And I think at that point, I think you understood where we were coming.
There's also a quote in the letter on page 3 that host agreements are negotiated on a site-specific case-by-case basis, and we agree with that. It's not reasonable to compare pilots versus host agreements. It's not reasonable to compare different energy markets. It's not reasonable to compare different taxing bodies. It really needs you have to look at each one on an individual case-by-case basis. That's their words, not mine. And I think lastly, they're saying that that we provided a curative amendment from the borough in order for them to move forward. The only reason we did a curative amendment is because our zoning ordinance was exclusionary and illegal. We're obligated by law to cure that. And if anybody says that it wasn't, and there's still some people that don't believe that it was exclusionary, well, if somebody wants to know why it was exclusionary, you don't wanna go through all the stuff, just come and look at the history of the zoning map in Jessup. When all the stuff on the other side on the east side of the town was changing to something other than M2, and the only M2 that was left was X'd out when you draw a 2,000-foot radius circle around it. If that isn't exclusionary, I don't know what is. And if you want to go and argue that in a court of law, you're gonna lose. So anyway, that's all I have to say, so ask me to tell you what happened at the conference yesterday, that's it.
Thanks, Dennis.
You want to have your opinion, I got mine.
We appreciate that. The information you provided for us every step of the way, the long hours at night. My wife still doesn't like you, but. Hey guys, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the courtesy. All right, that's how I would hope the meeting was gonna go. That was fantastic. Thank you very much. Jason, how do you wanna,
I'll just
do
get
you
up.
wanna come up here or?
No, I'll stand
Sure.
up, but I'll give you what I have.
They told him how to do
I have the technology.